Picture this. You're sitting across from someone you care about, having what seems like a normal conversation, but something feels off. Your gut is screaming at you, but you can't put your finger on why. Welcome to the invisible world of behavioral inconsistencies, where the body reveals what words desperately try to hide. I'm here to teach you something most men never learn: how to read the unspoken language that governs every human interaction. Today, we're diving deep into 5 behavioral patterns that reveal a person's hidden relationship history, not through gossip or interrogation, but through the science of micro-expressions and psychological tells. Before we begin, let me be crystal clear about something. This isn't about shaming anyone or playing detective in your relationships. This is about protecting your energy, your resources, and your emotional investment by learning to observe patterns that most people miss entirely. The goal isn't control, it's clarity. So why does this matter? Because in a world where authenticity is rare and words can be carefully crafted, the body never lies. Every experience we have leaves behavioral fingerprints, and understanding these patterns isn't about judgment. It's about making informed decisions about who deserves access to your life. Let's start with the first pattern I call the validation vacuum. Sign number 1, the validation vacuum. Watch carefully when you're in social settings together. Does she constantly scan the room for reactions when she speaks? Does she adjust her posture, hair, or clothing when attractive people enter the space? This isn't vanity. It's behavioral conditioning. Here's what's happening psychologically. Someone with extensive relationship history often develops an unconscious need for external validation. They've learned that their worth is measured by the attention they can command, not by their intrinsic value. This creates a compulsive scanning behavior. They're always reading the room, always measuring reactions. The male mistake here is dismissing this as just being social. But there's a difference between healthy social awareness and compulsive validation seeking. A person secure in their worth doesn't need constant environmental feedback to feel comfortable in their own skin. The STOIC response? Observe without judgment. If someone needs constant validation from strangers, ask yourself, what does this say about their relationship with themselves? And more importantly, what does this mean for your potential future together? Sign number 2, the digital fortress. This one's subtle, but powerful. Pay attention to phone behavior. I'm not talking about obvious red flags like hiding texts. I'm talking about micro behaviors. Does she turn her phone face down the moment she sits down with you? Does she have an unusually complex lock screen? Multiple passwords, face recognition, fingerprint locks all activated? Psychologically, this stems from what I call compartmentalization anxiety. Someone with a complex relationship history learns to create digital boundaries not just for privacy, but for emotional management. Each relationship exists in its own compartment, and the phone becomes the central hub where all these compartments intersect. The tell isn't secrecy itself, it's the unconscious rituals around digital privacy. Watch for over-explanation. Oh, I always keep my phone face down because... elaborate reason. When someone over-explains simple behaviors, they're often managing their own anxiety about what those behaviors might reveal. The STOIC approach? Don't go looking for evidence. Instead, notice patterns of transparency versus concealment. A person with nothing to hide doesn't develop elaborate rituals around hiding. Sign number 3. The intimacy paradox. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive sign. Someone with extensive relationship experience often displays what I call premature intimacy. They share deep personal stories very early, but maintain emotional distance in subtle ways. Here's the psychology. They've learned that vulnerability can be a tool for creating connection quickly, but they've also learned to protect their core emotional space. So they'll share dramatic stories from their past, discuss deep topics on the second date, but you'll notice they rarely ask equally deep questions about you. The behavioral tells are in the micro-expressions during these conversations. Watch their eyes. Are they making genuine connection when they share, or are they watching for your reaction? Are they processing their own emotions or performing emotional intimacy? Most men make the mistake of thinking early emotional sharing means genuine connection, but there's a difference between someone sharing their authentic self and someone who's learned to use vulnerability as a social tool. The Stoic response is to match their energy, not exceed it. If someone shares deep personal information very early, don't feel pressured to reciprocate immediately. Instead, observe. Are they sharing to connect or to create a specific impression? Sign number 4, the comparison reflex. This sign shows up in how they talk about other people, especially other women. Listen carefully. Do they frequently make comparisons? She's not as smart as she thinks she is. Or, I would never dress like that. Or subtle put-downs disguised as observations. Psychologically, this stems from what researchers call social comparison anxiety. Someone who's been in multiple competitive situations, whether for attention, relationships, or validation, develops a habit of unconsciously ranking everyone around them. The behavioral tell isn't obvious criticism. It's the automatic, almost unconscious way they position themselves relative to others. They can't look at another woman without immediately assessing threat level, competition factor, or comparative status. The male mistake is thinking this is just girl talk or normal social behavior. But healthy, secure people don't need to constantly position themselves on a hierarchy. They can appreciate others without feeling threatened or superior. The Stoic move? Notice whether they can celebrate other people's success without making it about themselves. Someone who constantly needs to compare and contrast is still fighting battles in their mind that you can't see. Sign number 5, the emotional thermostat. This is the most sophisticated sign and the hardest to detect. Watch their emotional regulation patterns. Do they have unusually tight control over their emotional expression? Or conversely, do they have moments of emotional intensity that seem disproportionate to the situation? Here's what's happening. Someone with extensive relationship experience often develops what I call emotional thermostat dysfunction. They've learned to manage their emotions for strategic purposes, turning feelings up or down based on what the situation requires rather than what they genuinely feel. The tells are in the transitions. Watch what happens between emotional states. Do they snap from happy to serious instantly? Do they seem to put on emotions rather than experience them naturally? Do they have difficulty with emotional consistency across different social contexts? This isn't about emotional intelligence. This is about emotional authenticity. Someone who's been in many relationships often learns to modulate their emotions for maximum effect, which means their emotional expressions become less genuine and more strategic. The psychological mechanism here is self-protection through emotional control. They've learned that raw, genuine emotion can be used against them, so they develop sophisticated emotional regulation, but at the cost of authentic expression. The male mistake is thinking emotional sophistication always means emotional health. But there's a difference between someone who's learned healthy emotional regulation and someone who's learned to use emotions as tools. The Stoic response? Trust your gut about emotional authenticity. If someone's emotions feel performed rather than genuine, that's valuable information. You want someone who can be genuinely themselves with you, not someone who's always calculating the best emotional strategy. Now here's what most men get wrong about all of these signs. They either ignore them completely or they use them as ammunition for arguments. Both approaches miss the point entirely. The Stoic approach is different. You observe, you process, and you make decisions based on patterns, not accusations. You don't confront someone about their validation-seeking behavior. You simply decide whether that behavior aligns with the kind of relationship you want. You don't interrogate someone about their phone habits. You notice whether their approach to privacy feels healthy and transparent to you. You don't shame someone for their emotional patterns. You assess whether those patterns create the kind of connection you're seeking. Here's the deeper truth. None of these signs are inherently good or bad. They're just information. Someone might display all these behaviors and still be capable of a healthy, committed relationship. Or they might display none of them and still be completely wrong for you. The power is in the observation itself, in developing the ability to see beyond words and appearances to the behavioral patterns that reveal someone's true relationship with themselves and others. Because ultimately, that's what all of these signs point to: someone's relationship with themselves, how they seek validation, how they manage privacy, how they handle intimacy, how they view others, how they regulate emotions. All of these behaviors reflect their internal world. And here's the STOIC principle that ties it all together. You cannot change someone else's behavioral patterns, but you can absolutely choose whether those patterns align with your values and goals. The highest value men understand this distinction. They don't waste energy trying to fix or change behavioral patterns that took years to develop. They simply observe, assess, and choose accordingly. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where something feels off but you can't explain why, remember, your subconscious is picking up on behavioral inconsistencies that your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. Trust that instinct, observe the patterns, and make decisions based on what you see, not what you hope to see. Because in the end, the body never lies, even when everything else does. The question isn't whether these signs are present. The question is whether you're paying attention to what they're telling you about the person you're considering letting into your life. Choose wisely. Your future self will thank you.